Hello, and thank you for watching the Angry Rooster Creations channel. I've been doing a series of ink tests on this channel, and in most of those videos I have mentioned that the sheets of paper that I had been writing on, where I had written with multiple inks on the same paper, were going to be used later as part of a longer running test on lightfastness of the various inks on these papers. Now, I have three papers here that I'm going to be using to run this test. I've got this Canson 98 pound mixed media paper. I have this Koh-i-Noor 50 pound sketch paper. And I have this Blick white sulfite 50 pound drawing paper. Now on these are an assortment of inks, most of which are, well, all of which are Noodler's inks. Most of which are their bulletproof line of inks that are supposed to be permanent and light fast. Most of them the eternal inks. And there are 4 polar inks on this page. That being Polar Green, Polar Brown, Polar Blood Falls, and Polar Krill. There is one of the Warden series inks on this on these pages, which is the Bad Blue Heron. I have Legal Blue, which is a permanent ink, but due to the more vibrant nature of this blue, I suspect that I might see some fading throughout this test. And then the last ink is a little bit of a wild card in this test because this is Noodler's Baystate Concord Grape. And the Baystate inks are not considered to be bulletproof or eternal inks. I believe there is a degree or partial components of this ink do seem to be permanent, but there are certain of the pigments and dyes that go into this ink that are, susceptible to being water soluble, and there's a chance that this ink here is probably more likely to show degradation from UV light exposure than the others. Now, the way I'm planning on doing this test is, it is, as of recording this first segment of the video tonight, is March the 14th. So I'll show this kind of broken watch here. But it's March the 14th, Friday, March the 14th of 2025. And I'm going to real quickly take an assortment here of some various pens that I know are not permanent or light fast. I have a Papermate Inkjoy pen here that I got from somewhere, a Bic grip roller. So the Inkjoy here is blue, this is a black pen, and I've got 3 Pilot G2 gel pens. These are going to sort of be my controls because I fully expect that these pens are going to fade during this test. I'm going to write on the page with them and probably in these margin areas. And then I'm going to take these pieces of paper and I'm going to tape them up in a window facing outward on the south side of my house. Right now at this point in March, it's late winter or early spring, kind of that transitional period. The sun is still mostly towards the southern sky, heavily in the southern sky. So the south side of my house gets full sunlight. So these pieces of paper will be taped up in the window for full sunlight, and I plan to leave them there for a full month. And so when that time is over, which I'll have to check my calendar, may count the days, it should be April the 14th, maybe April the 15th. I will take these pieces of paper down, I will bring them back in here, and I will shoot another segment of this video where I will look at the inks on the page and then take the pens and with the inks that were written on this page, write another sample and compare to see if there is any significant change in the hue or tone of the inks. And like I said, I fully expect my controls, these mixture of ballpoint and gel pens here, to change. Because I know, like, specifically this InkJoy style of ballpoint and this roller ball, I fully expect to fade in the sunlight. Because I have witnessed ballpoint pens fade in the sunlight. But with these inks, I believe that the Polar inks, the Bad Blue Heron, should not fade. If I understand correctly from what the capabilities that is said to be, that these inks are said to have, they should not fade. I'm very interested in seeing what happens to this Legal Blue. And because the Concord Grape here is not advertised as a Lightfast ink or an Eternal ink, I expect to see this one to change. But time will tell, so I'm going to go ahead and write on all of these with my control pens, and then once that little, I'll speed that footage up, and once that footage is finished, the next part of this video you see will just be a few seconds for now, but for me, it will be a month after shooting this segment. And now here we are back again. Now it is Sunday, April the 13th, late in the evening. I know that when I started this it was March the 14th, but today, about this time, is 30 days from when I taped up my papers. Now, I'm going to say this. What you're looking at here is the copy paper. This is, out of all the 4 sheets I wrote on, the 20-pound copy paper is the one that I did not put on, I did not tape up into the window. So this is sort of the base control sheet, as this is the one that was not exposed to sunlight. This was kept on the desk here and actually been covered for most of the time, was not exposed to much sunlight. So nothing has really changed with the colors on these sheets of paper. And I'm going to tell you right now, yeah, there were some changes with really only one of the inks, as far as I can tell just by looking at them. I got to do a writing sample where I'm going to compare, but only one of the inks on the paper of the fountain pen inks showed a significant change, and boy, it was a lot more significant than I was thinking it would be. So for our first paper that was taped up in the window, I'm going to show the Canson 98-pound Canson mixed media paper. And most of these inks look okay, but that Baystate Concord Grape, there is barely any ghost of anything being on this paper, to the point that almost all you can really see on here is the imprint on the paper from the nib and a faint pink, from the impression of the nib on the paper. Now I'm just going to have to say, this actually surprises me a lot, because when I did the test on the Baystate Concord Grape, the water test on that ink, when hit with water, the pink color washed out. It was the water soluble bit, and there was a very dark blue that was left, kind of like what you can see here in the chromatography. So I expected this ink, I expected the pink to fade out and the blue to remain and this to sort of turn blue and fade, but instead what seems to be holding on from light exposure from that Concord Grape is the pink. And as you can see, all of my little controls that I wrote on here, the G2 gel pens are practically gone. That big grip roller is still kind of there. The ink joy is mostly gone. But the thing about that big grip roller is it turned brown, which is odd. Like I said, I fully expected these to not survive the direct sunlight in that window. You can kind of see that, how it went from black to brown. Now, I'm going to try and do a little bit of a that looks maybe a hair bit darker, but remember this, from my ink tests, this is a non-absorbent paper that's still wet. As that dries, that polar krill there will probably fade, but it's looking pretty close to pretty much being the same hue. Now for the Polar Blood Falls. It's still a little wet, but the hue looks almost exactly the same to my eyes. It's probably not going to show up quite as well on the camera to my eyes. The one that's kind of surprising me is that Legal Blue still looks very vibrant. And it looks like that hue matches as well. The Legal Blue held up to the sunlight quite well. Bad Blue Heron. And I will say this, the pens I am using, well, oops, maybe I should stop talking and spell, but the pens I'm using are the same pens that I used during the ink tests for these inks. Come on, focus. Yep, it looks like the same shade there. Now the Polar Brown. So I didn't swap up pens for this. Pretty much the same hue. It looks just like it did before. And the last one on this piece of paper. Oh! Yeah, I just realized something. This is going to look different. Because I made a video on these 82 pens. And I swapped the nib in this pen. This now has a medium nib instead of a... It now has a medium nib in this pen instead of a... instead of an extra fine. So that's going to look darker in that new writing because that is a much fatter nib. You can see it there. But if you look at the polar green on the copy paper, that was the control that was not exposed to the light. It doesn't actually appear to have changed. Let's see, I do have, this one's probably hard start. I don't know if this one will actually write. And oh, another pen that had polar green. Yeah, this one's been inked for a while. It's probably not going to write for me. Ew, and I'm going to say that ink has mostly dried in this one because this one's been inked a long time ago. Yeah, that one's not going to write for me. But it looks to me like everything on this paper, except for the Baystate Concord Grape, seem to hold up. Now, the next paper was the Koh-i-Noor paper here. And I'm just going to tell you, looking at the papers, the ink hues look exactly the same on all of them. On my controls down here, kind of the same. You can barely see out the G2 pins there. That big grip roller turned brown. And you can actually see on this one that the pink from that Baystate Concord Grape has kind of held out a little bit more. And, you know, as a reference, here was what that should have looked like on the control, my copy paper that stayed inside that wasn't taped up in the window. And all the other ink hues pretty much look the same. I'm still surprised at how vibrant the Legal Blue stayed. I fully expected that one to fade some, and it didn't. As you can see on the Canson paper here. Then our last paper, this was actually the piece of paper that was in the middle. It was in the middle of the Canson and the Koh-i-Noor, so arguably this one got the most direct sunlight. And once again, our Baystate Concord Grape is barely holding on here with some little bits of pink. And all of my other colors seem to have held on exactly as they should have. So all of the inks here that were listed as being eternal, bulletproof, and lightfast, and all the things that they claim to be, are the ones that held on. The Baystate ink, which is not called an eternal or bulletproof ink, it faded out. I'm still surprised this faded out the way it did. It did not fade out the way I expected it to. And I mean, it's almost completely gone. That's kind of crazy. And then, like I said, once again, that little grip roller there, that little is the only one of the disposable pins that held on, and it turned brown. So there you have it. That's my little light test here. I have a few other inks I might end up testing because all of my inks didn't fit on these papers. Did not fit on my papers here. And I might end up testing them. Like, I've got Lexington Gray, I've got the Noodler's Wellman Sepia ink, which I don't really think that one's considered a bulletproof. The Lexington Gray here is a bulletproof ink. I have my Noodler's Heart of Darkness, which is my kind of go-to black ink for inking sketches. And that one is supposed to be a bulletproof ink. So there's just 3 inks there. I have some little random ink samples of some other inks that I might try out. You know, these kinds of little Goulet pen samples that I might end up trying out and do another round of Lightfastness testing. But with the inks that I tried, the Polar Green, Polar Brown, Bad Blue Heron, Legal Blue, Polar Blood Falls, and Polar Krill, the ones that were said to be Lightfast, eternal, bulletproof inks, are indeed Lightfast. Like I said, these were taped up in the window, like taped directly to the glass facing outside. It would be like as if you put these in a picture frame and hung it on the outside on the south wall of your house. So all the sun that hit the side of that house hit directly on these. And as you can see, the disposable pins pretty much went away except for that grip roller and the Baystate. You can barely even tell that anything was on that paper. And frankly, if you were looking at this and didn't know what that was written with, you would think it was some kind of a pink gel pen, because it's about as faint as as that little red Pilot G2 there, and then the blue and pink I think that's the colors I had. Yeah, I had a blue and a pink on here. Those are completely gone. The only one that barely hung on was that red, and then this little bit grip roller thing. So there you have it. I hope that this was useful information for those of you that watched. I mean, for me, for my art purposes, it kind of confirmed what I sort of assumed. But it's good to have an actual confirmation that these inks that I like to use for drawing and such seem to be as permanent as I thought they were. So that's just, for me, it's a good confirmation, and I hope that for those of you that might be looking at these, maybe you were wondering, well, how eternal or bulletproof are the Noodler's inks really? For these particular inks that I have on my papers here, you know, with the exception of the one ink that was not claimed to be eternal, but for these I've got here, I feel pretty comfortable in saying, yeah, they're pretty much the real deal. Now, if you watched this long, watch the whole video, thank you very much for that. And if you got something out of it, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like button down there. That would help me out. You know, if you've got any kind of questions, concerns, or, you know, criticisms that you want to offer up, comments are open down there. At least as of right now, at the time of posting this video, I don't have a whole lot of subscribers. I don't usually get a whole lot of comments. So if you comment down there, I'll see your comment and I will reply to it. So if you've got any questions, like I said, questions, concerns, criticisms, suggestions, I'm open to all of it, and it'd be much appreciated. All those things help me out. And like I say in my other videos, if you watched this one, you thought it was informative, maybe you've watched some of my other videos, and you appreciate the information, you think I'm doing a pretty good job, you know, I'd really appreciate a subscription. That would also help me out. But with having said all of that, that pretty much concludes this test. And thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.